Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the What Life. We're racing once again. Obviously, this is the last race for the February series of Race Like a Champ. Guys, Knickerbocker in the New York map. I know nothing about this one. Guys, thanks for saying hi before the race. I joined in super late, so cheeky little warm-up, 10-15 minutes. Dived in. I think I joined the Zwift companion app about 10 seconds before the start. Off we go. The one thing we're not going to talk about tonight, this evening, guys, is Cat Bs, Cat As, Cat B Pros. That's not part of the conversation. We're going to talk about something different this evening, which is fundamentally riding out of the saddle. So, guys, please keep a bit more of a closer eye on the video of me actually riding, and you'll be able to see the times that I'm out the saddle. And I'm going to explain to you why this is important. Firstly, if you do want to chat about cat, what cat is what, and all that kind of stuff, I love having that conversation. I think it's brilliant. I do also want to caveat that by saying that I think some people think that I have that conversation, and I kind of presume it comes from an air of maybe arrogance or confidence, or that I think I'm better than I am, and things like that. 100% not the case, guys. Your boy is as humble as as it is, because every week I find this hard. I get dropped. I, honest to God, do not care that I get dropped in an esports race online. I think it's brilliant. I think it's great that the level is as high as it is, and it is driving me to get better. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I don't presume that I have the right to finish in the front group or anything like that. I just love it. I'm here because I enjoy it. I make videos because obviously I've got nothing better to do on a Monday night. And I love it. I like talking about it. So that's the category stuff aside. There are other videos you can talk about. The reason I want to talk about riding out of the saddle is two things. And before we dive into that, first of all, guys, let me give you some stats on the race. It's 22.5k long, 365 meters of elevation, which for a typical Zwift monthly race or a Z Racing monthly race is probably on the top side of what you normally might get in terms of elevation for these types of races. Okay, so why is this important, and why am I talking about it? First and foremost, we did obviously the Muckle Yin last week, which has the Savage Skur climb on it. Your boy Eric dropped into my DMs on Instagram and basically told me as good as it was. He was like, "Get out!" You can see me now out the saddle, like right now out the saddle, and this will be important in a second. I promise I'll get to it. So he dived into my DMs. He said, "Look, you need to get out the saddle more. You need to be riding harder out the saddle on the climbs, and it's going to help you." So I took this on board, and it's something that I've been working on. But the reason it's particularly important this evening, guys, is because I am absolutely jazzed. And again, I'm out the saddle. You see that whole block of my high watts down at the bottom, my watt zones. You can see that I put those high watts in all out the saddle, and that's important. The reason it's important, guys, is because obviously, I'm not saying you guys have to pay too much attention to it, but I have a running series on my YouTube called The Comeback. It's about me training for a 100-mile run event. Now, obviously, trying to concurrently train for a 100-mile run event and also improve my cycling has been tough as balls. It's really hard. My legs are taking an absolute battering. I'm not doing a huge amount of volume. My volume numbers aren't crazy, but if you combine them both together, it's a lot. But here's the interesting thing, is that yesterday I raced a 10k race, a running race, flat out 10k. I came in with 37:52. So if you've been following the Comeback series and talking about running, I won't talk about running too much. I did a 5k park run. My first one was 20 minutes 42. My second one was 19 minutes 48. Yesterday, the first 5k was 18:48, and then I finished in 37:52. So what's your point, Max? My point is my legs are absolutely ballsed, guys. My legs are so tired from actually having to run really hard for as good as 40 minutes yesterday. And I went for a little run today, 12k or something. So my legs are absolutely exhausted. There was no way I was going to be able to stay in the saddle and put down big numbers. So I just decided to myself before getting on the bike this evening, I was like, look, Eric's told me to get out the saddle more. He's obviously knows what he's talking about because all he does is Zwift Race. So I'm going to get out the saddle more. And I'm going to try and let, my whole body put into practice, put the watts down, put my whole body into creating energy and creating the power that I need to stay with these punches and move the group. And guys, like, honestly, I was absolutely, like, my body is struggling. Like, I had a really hard race yesterday, and diving into this, my legs were in absolute pieces. And I'm not just saying that. And so all this time I spent out the saddle on this evening's race made such a difference. I genuinely believe that if I kind of had, if I hadn't have done this 10K flat out yesterday, and my legs were in even like half decent shape, this race would have been completely different. And I say that from a place of actually, and I don't want to sound, this is kind of, I sound a little bit kind of confident or / obnoxious or whatever you want to call it, but I didn't find this race terribly hard. I just kind of messed it up. And that's obviously a good place to be, considering, where I started to where I've come to now. But a large part of this has all come from this. And guys, thanks for the tip on where the climb was in this event. The majority of the climbing is this particular point here. And then you will see how much of this climb I spend out the saddle. Firstly, I got the heads up from Mark, I think it was, who dropped in and said, by the way, when the road turns to glass, that's the climb. So I was like, well, do you know what? I'll just move up the group for that. So I moved up the group for that, and that worked really well. And then secondly, you can just see me kind of dive out the saddle on the points where the road gets a little bit pointy-uppy, and then I kind of sit down for the bit when it kind of flattens out. The only thing that I do wrong is that I balls up my gearing at one stage, and I'm just too like mentally and physically fatigued to do anything about it, and I just end up churning out the watts rather than swapping down gears. And I think that's basically the one thing that stopped me from staying on this front group. So you see me just in and out the saddle, just kind of like when the road starts pointing upwards, jump out. And I would probably say that riding out the saddle's, a little bit more akin to some of the movements that are kind of relevant to running. And I've really found, so firstly, when Eric slid into the DMs, he was like, dude, get out the saddle more. You'll get more power out of it. You'll get more out of it. You'll change the way that your muscles work. I mean, he didn't go into that much detail. He literally said, get out the saddle more. But you get more, changes the way, the muscle groups that you're activating, and you get to alternate between two. And I really found it made a huge difference. So on Friday last week, I did an Alp to Zwift workout with a buddy. I messaged him. I said, dude, we're going to go and do Alp to Zwift. But what we're going to do is we're going to do it tethered, and we're going to take it in 5-minute shifts each. He did his 5-minute shifts. He's a Cat D rider, I think, and he's just kind of building his confidence on Zwift. But he was a CD rider, and he's a bit of a heavier dude. So he was just doing his 5 minutes seated. I did my full 5 minutes each time out the saddle, just like pushing watts. And it's something that I'm really going to focus on, a little bit in the next kind of 4 to 6 weeks, because I feel like my running is kind of helping that, but it has made such a change. So here, like, the only thing here is that you end up seeing that my cadence just starts dropping super low. I obviously get the gearing completely wrong. I'm down at 48. I'm just mentally tired. I just couldn't be bothered to flick down the gears, but I don't want to be obnoxious, but I think if I actually had changed the gears and I didn't get down to 48 RPM, I might have had more of a chance of just staying with that group. And I'm hoping doesn't come across as confident or arrogant. Guys, that's kind of the way that I see it. I don't know, part of me was just like, maybe not the group, sorry, but the 4 or 6 riders that are in front, maybe might have been able to stay on their wheel, and I think they end up bunching up, and I just miss it. So all in all, considering my power up was an anvil rather than a feather, I really found that kind of like out the saddle time to be incredibly rewarding. And then obviously doing this training session with a buddy where we basically did the Alp tethered together. So, it's a joint, maybe 50-minute. We did it in like 48 something. And, he did his 5 minutes of efforts whilst I recovered. When it was my 5 minutes, I was out the saddle, didn't touch the saddle for 5 minutes and worked hard. Now, interestingly enough, when I first started Zwift racing, I had a few comments from people just being like, oh, you need to get out the saddle more. You need to get out the saddle more. And I agree with you, but it's also, there's two things. You need to work on it. I don't think just telling someone to ride out the saddle is necessary. Well, I mean, it is the answer, but it is something that people need to be aware of, but they also need to work and have an understanding of you need to put some practice into doing it. Because a lot of the times when people were telling me that back in the day, like 6, 8, 10 months ago, I wasn't able to put that effort in out the saddle because I just didn't have the leg strength, I didn't have the aerobic fitness, so I struggled. But now that I've got to a certain level, and again, I'm not being obnoxious, I'm just saying I didn't find this race, and obviously that's reflected in my numbers, my overall numbers for this race. I think I'm 284 watts for the entire thing, which is 3.7 watts per kg. I didn't find it like terribly hard. I think part of that was falling off the front group. We end up, our little chase group, which ends up being maybe like the third chase group, we end up kind of being like a minute behind the front group. So I'm definitely going to give it another go with slightly better legs, maybe later in the week. But my pro tip to you is it's something you need to work on. Being out the saddle, the different kind of neuromuscular movements that comes. My heart rate doesn't get as high your heart rate doesn't get as high because you're effectively using some of your body weight to effectively generate the energy of turning the cranks, because you're just kind of like standing up and then letting your body weight fall down. So it has been, big shout out to Eric for taking the time to just dive in the DM and just tell me that. But then it's become something that I've decided to work on. And a punchy course like this little this little New York course is perfect for it. It's perfect for like just practicing just those 30-second, there you go again, I'm out the saddle, all these little punches up these climbs. I was just out the saddle, just putting in a few extra watts, bumping me up, and it kept my heart rate lower. I don't think my heart rate did get very high this evening. I wonder what my max HR for the evening was 168, so I'm well off. I think that's probably represented in the huge level of fatigue that I am feeling physically, neuromuscularly. Just wasn't able to work hard enough to get a high heart rate into the 170s. But still, to be kind of, from a personal perspective, the fact that I'm able to kind of put these efforts in when I'm feeling like this, it does fill me with confidence. It's nice to reflect back and look at some of the races that I've done, just to try and see that progression, because a lot of the progression isn't necessarily shown always in results. But I think, feeling comfortable in a race and feeling like you have the ability to change things up. This was actually the part of the race where I was struggling, because I was sat in this group, the group's moving along. I knew that if there was a kick, I just wasn't going to be able to hold anything kind of 3.8, 3.9, 4 watts per kg for a prolonged period of time. Luckily, I think the general consensus for this, again, guys, out the saddle, any little climb, just out the saddle. And I think, it has played into my strength of doing a ton of like run training as well. I think that's definitely played a role in helping generate that stronger ability to get out the saddle and just keep moving and generate the lactate. The one thing I'll say from this evening, guys, my lactate levels, like, literally felt like they were through the roof. And I was actually quite enjoying it, because the thing is with lactate, that kind of feeling where you're like, oh my God, my legs are absolutely killing me. But it's not aerobic. It's just like, why do my legs feel like they just don't want to react to anything? I was enjoying that sensation because I knew that if I did this now and held on a little bit longer, then the next time I tried to do it, I would be able to do it a little bit longer or a little bit harder. So there is that kind of slightly masochistic side to this cycle mentality, which is if you can just push that little bit harder whilst you're really asking a ton from your body, then next time you're going to be able to ask a ton plus one, which I think is fantastic, and it's always important to remember. We're about to dive into the bunch sprint for our group, and this is quite important. Well, not important, but it's quite fun. We had a good little group, guys, maybe 15 riders here, 15, 18 riders. I really kind of wasn't sure whether I was going to have a sprint in me, but I thought, what, I'll give it a go and just see what happens. I'm going to do a video on sprinting next week, or this week, hopefully going to get out and do some sprint videos and just show you guys or talk about some stuff when it comes to sprinting. But all in all, I'm actually quite pleasantly surprised with this sprint effort. I think we're gonna like a few guys go like a touch early. I do my best to go with them, flick through a few gears. I'll also say, guys, I got a new chain, new cassette, because obviously I broke my cassette the other week and I upgraded a new chain. So the bike is actually feeling pretty good. I'm actually really enjoying it. This is not a bad effort in terms of a sprint for the finish. I managed to hold it for a little bit longer than I thought I would be able to. Pick up a few places on the line. A few guys kind of beat me off the line. And you can see that my power numbers aren't terrible relative to my 90 days. Guys, I will see you